On the world map, Cam Ranh Bay is just a curved blue patch along the south-central coast of Vietnam. But in the eyes of naval strategists, Cam Ranh looks like a perfect safe, deep, sheltered, protected from storms, and sitting right next to some of the busiest sea lanes on Earth. That is why, for more than a century, almost every major power that has stepped into this region, from France, Russia, Japan, the United States to the Soviet Union, has looked at Cam Ranh with desire. To understand why a small bay has such magnetic power, we have to start with nature. Most of Vietnam's more than 3,200 kilometers of coastline is long, sandy beaches with shallow seabeds. There are not many places that are both sheltered and deep enough for large warships to enter and maneuver comfortably. Cam Ranh is a rare exception. The bay is shaped like a giant funnel. The mouth is relatively narrow, flanked by rocky hills. As you go inward, the water surface opens up while the natural depth increases, in some spots to more than 20 meters. For warships, aircraft carriers, amphibious ships, tankers, submarines, this is close to ideal. Because the entrance is narrow, strong winds and big waves from the open sea have trouble reaching the inner harbor. The anchorage is extremely well protected. Ships can ride out typhoons and heavy seas without needing huge man-made breakwaters like in many other ports. For a navy, having a base that can operate year-round with little disruption from weather is priceless. In war, storms do not wait for people to finish fighting. A fleet that owns a natural shelter like Cam Ranh dramatically reduces the risk of nature wrecking its operations. Around the bay, the surrounding terrain is also perfect for building a base. Mountain ranges and peninsulas frame the water and create commanding heights over the entrance. Those high points can host radar, observation posts, coastal artillery, and defensive missile systems. In other words, Cam Ranh is like a natural fortress. With relatively modest construction, it can be turned into a steel gate, where any unknown ship would struggle to slip through without permission. If Cam Ranh were only naturally beautiful and sheltered, it would still just be one nice harbor among many. What really makes great powers crave it is its position on the global strategy map. From Cam Ranh, warships can easily reach the South China Sea, one of the busiest maritime crossroads in the world, connecting the Indian Ocean and the Pacific. A huge share of global trade passes through these waters every day. For any state with naval ambitions, controlling footholds around the South China Sea means extra leverage to monitor, pressure, or even partially block that flow of commerce if necessary. Cam Ranh sits almost in the middle of the Southeast Asian seaboard, not far from vital choke points like the Malacca, Sunda, and Lombok Straits, and from major economic centers in the region. From here, a fleet can move north toward the waters near Taiwan and the East China Sea, or south toward Singapore, Indonesia, and the Indian Ocean. For countries that want to maintain a long-term presence in the region, Cam Ranh is like a strategically placed gas station, close enough to hotspots, yet far enough to be safe. As early as the French colonial period, French naval officers recognized the value of the bay. At the beginning of the 20th century, the Russian Imperial Fleet, on its way to East Asia to fight Japan, stopped at Cam Ranh as a staging ground for repairs and resupply before heading toward Tsushima Strait. The Russians also saw the bay as an ideal base for their Pacific ambitions. Although the Russo-Japanese War ended in a disastrous defeat for Russia, the memory of a safe, discreet Cam Ranh was recorded in their military reports. During World War II, the Japanese Empire, after occupying Indochina, also used Cam Ranh as a base for warships and submarines. From here, the Imperial Navy could threaten Allied shipping in the South China Sea and control the sea routes between the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Submarines slipped out of the bay under the cover of night to attack Allied convoys, a small but telling part of the maritime war. After Vietnam gained independence and went through multiple conflicts, Cam Ranh once again became the object of strategic competition. During the Vietnam War, The United States used the bay as a major air naval base. They built airstrips, fuel depots, and modern piers, turning Cam Ranh into one of their key launch points for aircraft and ships in the region. For the U.S., the bay was not only a logistics hub, but a springboard for projecting naval power across a huge area. When the war ended, the facilities left by the U.S. at Cam Ranh continued to prove their value in the Cold War. Amid global tension between the U.S. and the Soviet bloc, the Soviet Union signed agreements with Vietnam to use Cam Ranh as a vital tropical logistics base. For Moscow, having Cam Ranh meant owning a unique foothold near Asian sea lanes where its warships and long-range bombers could refuel, refit, and conduct reconnaissance. From Cam Ranh, Soviet reconnaissance aircraft could monitor American fleet movements, key shipping routes, and electronic signals. Submarines operating in the Pacific, if they had Cam Ranh as a hideout, could stay on station longer and expand their patrol radius. It was no coincidence that for many years, Cam Ranh was considered one of the Soviet Union's most important overseas naval bases, on par with Tartus in Syria and several ports in the Mediterranean. When the Cold War ended and the Soviet Union collapsed, the world order shifted, but interest in Cam Ranh did not. As competition in the Indo-Pacific intensified, powers like the United States, Russia, Japan, India, and others all expressed some level of desire to access the facilities there, from refueling stops, maintenance visits, and joint exercises to more ambitious ideas. The reason is simple. In recent years, the South China Sea has become not only a trade route, but a zone of complex disputes. Naval activity from major powers has surged. Without a deep, safe port nearby for repairs and resupply, they would have to rely on more distant bases, driving up costs and cutting the time they can stay in theater. With its location, Cam Ranh naturally appears in every plan for sustaining a fleet in the region. In strategic terms, Cam Ranh is a rare item in Southeast Asia. Singapore sits at a crucial choke point in the Malacca Strait, but its limited land area and dense commercial port activity leave little room for a massive military base. Several ports in the Philippines or Indonesia also occupy good locations, but not all possess the natural depth, shelter, and surrounding terrain of Cam Ranh. When you combine position, depth, and geography, it is hard to find another place quite like it. That is why, in the calculations of great powers, Cam Ranh always pops up somewhere in their options. Some would like to use the bay as a technical stop for submarines. Others want to send aircraft carriers and destroyers there regularly for both maintenance and signaling presence. Some think even further ahead. If they could build communications, surveillance, and logistics facilities at Cam Ranh, they would gain eyes and arms, reaching deep into the heart of the Asia-Pacific. For Vietnam, however, Cam Ranh's appeal is a double-edged sword. On one hand, owning one of the finest deep-water bays in the world is a major asset for national defense. Vietnam can use Cam Ranh as the main base for its own navy, where submarines, surface ships, and naval aviation work together to safeguard maritime sovereignty in the South China Sea. On the other hand, the appetite of big powers means every decision related to the bay must be made extremely carefully to avoid letting any external player turn it into a platform for pressuring others. In recent years, Vietnam has chosen to develop Cam Ranh as a multi-purpose international port. It can provide technical and logistics services for military and civilian ships from many countries, while firmly maintaining the principle that no foreign state may establish a permanent military base there. This approach leverages the bay's geographic advantages while preserving balance in foreign policy. Instead of leasing the bay to a single power, Vietnam opens it for service to multiple partners, making Cam Ranh a symbol of a multi-directional, independent diplomacy that does not tilt completely to anyone. Seen more deeply, Cam Ranh is like a miniature model of Vietnam's long-standing strategic problem. Living next to big powers, lying on vital trade routes, holding locations that everyone wants, Vietnam has to both exploit these advantages and avoid being dragged into great power games. Every time Cam Ranh has been used as a foreign base, Vietnam has, in some way, paid a price in sovereignty and strategic autonomy. Conversely, every time it has kept full decision-making authority over the Bay, Vietnam has gained a strong card on the diplomatic chessboard. From a geopolitical perspective, you can imagine Cam Ranh as a key between two oceans. If that key sits in the hands of a single great power, the regional balance of power will tilt sharply. If the key is held by the host, Vietnam, and opened selectively to many for peaceful services without ceding control, then no single player can dominate the area as easily. That is why every time Vietnam announces a new policy toward Cam Ranh, strategic communities around the world pay very close attention. Another reason great powers desire Cam Ranh is its support for air power. During the war, the United States used Cam Ranh Air Base as one of its busiest. The runways are long, the climate mostly favorable, and distances from here to hotspots in the South China Sea and surrounding region are manageable. For states wanting to base maritime patrol aircraft, transports, or tankers in the region, Cam Ranh would be a logical option, if Vietnam granted access. But that very potential also forces Vietnam to remain cautious. A modern airbase combined with a deep-water port, if controlled by an outside power, would instantly turn Cam Ranh into an unsinkable aircraft carrier, a land base that cannot be sunk and can project military power in all directions. In already sensitive surrounding waters, letting a foreign country construct a large footprint at Cam Ranh would inflame the fears of other states and easily trigger a new spiral of confrontation. Looking back over more than a century, every period when Cam Ranh was used by a great power coincided with some major storm in world affairs. The Russo-Japanese War, World War II, the Vietnam War, the Cold War. The Bay is like a mirror reflecting global tension. When rivalry among big players eases, Cam Ranh quiets down and mainly serves Vietnam's own economic and defensive needs. When tensions flare up, the name Cam Ranh reappears frequently in strategic analyses, like a card everyone wants to hold. So the question, why do great powers always covet Cam Ranh, does not have a simple answer like, because it is deep and beautiful. Behind that are layers of reasons: geography, logistics, history, politics, economics, and above all, Vietnam's position in the Indo-Pacific geopolitical picture. Every warship that has anchored in Cam Ranh, every squadron that has taken off from its runways, is a reminder of how much weight this small bay carries in the minds of strategists. Today, as the world enters a new era of great power competition, Cam Ranh will likely continue to show up in reports, closed-door discussions, and analytical articles. But unlike many earlier phases, this time, Vietnam itself is firmly at the wheel. It decides how the bay is used, for what purpose, and under what principles. A Cam Ranh open to cooperation, but closed to dependency, a Cam Ranh that serves both as a shield for national sovereignty and as an international port for peaceful use, may be the clearest answer Vietnam can give to those who still silently desire this extraordinary deep water bay.